Hey there. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for the very last week of June. This is for June 24th through the 30th. I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you. I hope that you enjoy this still fairly new layout where I'm going to talk about the astrology in more of a casual setting. I do have my notes here, but it's going to be much more casual and sort of more of like a podcast kind of feel. So, uh, the title that I've given this week is Dreams and Opportunity. We have an aspect involving Neptune and Uranus, and we're going into eclipse season. So, it's got this sort of dreamy yet opportunistic quality to it. And I'm excited to share the astrology with you. So, the first thing that's happening this week is we'll have Venus square Neptune. And so, this is the first aspect that's happening in the week. Uh, it is actually happening on Monday. So, I think we may have already been feeling into this energy, and then it'll sort of peak on Monday, and then we'll roll into it in the rest of the week. So, Venus Neptune is one of my favorite aspects because it's highly creative and it's highly connective. It does have some downfalls, of course, along with some other aspects. So, Venus is relationships, love, beauty, sex, even money. And then Neptune is associated with the softening of boundaries. Neptune is said to show where there is a highly spiritual dimension, but there can also be high delusion or um, seeing things as you want to see them when that's not how they are in reality. It can be seeing things as better than they actually are, or just like having a certain sense of confusion. Uh, and so, uh, so with Venus square Neptune, when this happens, it's kind of like there's a little bit of a tension there. Square is tension aspect. And I see Venus Neptune natally in people who have a lot of challenges with boundaries in relationship, with maintaining a sense of realistic expectations in relationship. And so that could be present here in a more subtle way, in a more sort of fleeting way, because it is a short-term transit. So, so this week I would definitely watch out for how it is that you're connecting, how clear are things like boundaries, how are things presented versus the reality? Are you actually seeing things and being presented things in the way that they actually are? Of course, on the flip side, this is a great time for creativity and for any kind of spiritual exploration. Can also be great too for just connecting with people at a deeper level. Again, knowing that that it's important to sort of take everything with a grain of salt because relationship matters are not super clear at this time. The other thing that's happening this week is the last quarter moon in the sign of Aries. And so this is happening on Tuesday, the 25th. It's going to be exact at 2:46 a.m. Pacific time. So hi Tani, hi Ethel. Ethel, yeah, this week will definitely be a lot lighter than the last week. I should have probably mentioned that in the beginning. Last week was heavy, 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 intense, as you may have experienced. At least the astrology was intense. We had a lot of aspects involving Saturn, Pluto, Mars, etc. So this week, I think, is going to be sort of a breath of fresh air. So last quarter moon on Tuesday. Last quarter moon is a time when we're sort of like coming to terms with something. We're wrapping things up. It's the last main lunation before we get to the new moon. So it's a time of sort of like figuring out what you want to do with things that have loose ends. It's a time also of turning inward even more and preparing for the sense of quiet and deep introspection that happens around the dark moon and the new moon. So it's kind of like you're getting all of your ducks in a row, is how I see this happening. And this is in the sign of Aries. So Aries is a cardinal fire sign. So movement, initiation, and then fire. So you may be getting things in order very quickly. There may be a sense of urgency that you feel. And so I would definitely work with that. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this week, the moon is in Aries. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are great days for doing anything active, doing anything where it requires you to act in a quick manner and you don't really have to think about things as much. I think that is also great with Venus square Neptune earlier in the week too. So earlier in the week, I wouldn't necessarily plan to do a whole lot of like planning, logical work. If you can avoid it, I would focus more on things that require you to act quickly and to sort of like physical activities, anything that requires you to kind of like go off of a gut instinct. And then I would save more of the contemplative work or planning and ideas for later in the week. Also important this week, that's sort of like, it's not a technical transit, but it's an ingress, planet changing sign that's important, is Mercury will shift from Cancer into the sign of Leo. And I think this also brings sort of a sigh of relief as well, because Mercury will no longer be opposite Saturn and Pluto, which is kind of an intense place for Mercury to be. So it'll be out of the sign of Cancer, moving into Leo. And this is important because when Mercury is in Leo, it's sort of like preparing for the time when it's going to go retrograde in Leo next month. So just to give you a little preview of the dates of that, Mercury retrograde will happen July 7th at 4 degrees of Leo, and it will be retrograde. It'll actually go back through Cancer, and then it will station direct July 31st at 24 degrees of Cancer. So this is important because it's sort of wading into the territory of a sign that it's going to kind of like double back on. So the other thing that's happening this week is the sun will sextile Uranus. And so this is more of a subtle aspect, the way that I see it, because it's a sextile. So sextiles are about where there is an opportunity present to tune into this energy. It's not something that's necessarily going to be at the forefront of your awareness, but it's still super helpful. So the sun is ego, conscious identity. It's what it is that a person has to share in their natal chart. And then Uranus is about surprises, doing things differently, and it has this unexpected kind of vibe to it. So this is happening on Thursday. And so I would say, if there's something new that you're interested in exploring, new information, new ideas, doing something differently, connecting with people that maybe think in a different way than you're used to, that could benefit you this week. Let's see. And I didn't do this last week, but I wanted to sort of go into the flow of the lunar cycles in these weekly videos. So I talked about Aries, moon in Aries, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the moon will move into Taurus for Thursday, Friday, and then the morning of Saturday. So Taurus is fixed earth sign, so it is more practical, it's more stable. There is a slowing down when we go to Taurus from Aries. So Aries is very active, it's very instinctive, and Taurus, there's kind of more of a meandering kind of feel. So I would say, that's like sort of the emotional tone. We can think of it that way. So moon in Taurus, especially, this is kind of cool, I'm just realizing this, the moon will be in Taurus on Thursday when the sun aspects Uranus, and Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. So this is kind of cool. We can really take advantage of that energy for opportunities, for something spontaneous happening. The moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus, so this is said to be an auspicious place for the moon to be. And so even more like emphasis on taking advantage of an opportunity or looking for a resource, something that you can really tap into. Um, yeah. And then the moon will be in the sign of Gemini Saturday afternoon through Sunday. So the weekend I see is kind of more of like a playful vibe, and again, where there may be sort of a sense of thinking about things, contemplation, more contemplation, less doing on the weekend. I think again, this week, earlier in the week is when I would plan, if I were planning for you, I would plan to do more things that involve like exerting yourself physically and like taking charge and taking action. And then later in the week, especially the weekend, it is more contemplative because Moon in Gemini. Gemini is about thoughts and sharing ideas and just thinking in general. And uh, the moon in Gemini for this lunar cycle is the dark moon, because we'll have our new moon solar eclipse in Cancer next week. So just to give you also a little heads up on that, we'll have two eclipses in July. First one is a new moon solar eclipse on July 2nd, and that is exact at 12:16 p.m. Pacific time at 10 degrees 38 minutes of Cancer. The second one will be a full moon lunar eclipse, 24 degrees of Capricorn, 24 degrees 4 minutes at 2:38 p.m. Pacific time. And so I'm thinking, because a lot of you have asked about eclipses, I'm thinking that I'll do a special video about eclipses. But we're essentially in that season, and there's a lot to say about it. So I won't say too much about it. But we are sort of like uh, as the week progresses, there's a turning inward to prepare for that new moon time, because new moon, even though it is a time of beginnings, the like we always have to start. The beginning starts internally. It starts at the center. It starts at being in this place of quietness, this place of introspection, and then from there, then there is a movement outward. But we're going this week. We're collecting in first. So, what does that look like in tangible terms? What does that actually mean? So, I would say that that can look like getting more downtime, especially over the weekend, uh, doing more reflective and contemplative practices. It can be simply journaling. It can be like, if you like journaling exercises, there's a lot of different resources online. One that I've enjoyed recently is what's her name? Oh, the woman that does the work. Um, Name starts with a B. Someone will know. It'll come to me in a moment. But she does like this process of looking at what really bothers you and how you feel about it. But any kind of journaling prompts, any kind of self-reflective prompts can be really helpful for this process of introspection. Um, and I think just like slowing things down is going to feel really good this week and this weekend. When we get into eclipse season, it can kind of feel like things are speeding up. And I think we got sort of a kind of a taste of that with this last week. We had Mercury and Mars opposite Saturn and Pluto, and that's an intense combination. And so I think that this next few weeks will be a little bit different than that, in that it's not going to feel as highly charged, but it's still going to feel possibly um, like things are happening very quickly. And so I want you to know that you can choose when to slow down. You can choose for yourself when you need more time to process something, and when you need more time just to sit with whatever it is that's happening in your life. All right, so I have 3 tips for you to really make the most out of this week. Tip number 1 is don't get lost. So I'm saying that this week because Venus Neptune. Venus Neptune, we can kind of, when this is happening, we can kind of get like lost in a vision, lost in a feeling. Um, Neptune can also be associated with visions. And I found too, it's really interesting. People that have Venus Neptune in their birth chart, they can have this visionary quality, whether it is having like really vivid fantasies or dreams, or just kind of like, or maybe they're highly intuitive and they have this download and then they literalize that. And that can be kind of tricky because visions are not always meant to be literal. Sometimes they're symbolic. And so don't get lost this week in whatever it is that you're feeling or vision or dream. And I think a lot of that is done through the introspection that we're talking about. Let's see. Tip number 2 is to prepare for change. And so I'm saying this because a few different things, because we have this week specifically the sun sextile Uranus. And so that is a change that is like, it feels like a mini change. It feels like, again, sextile is opportunity for change. But also, we're going into the eclipse season. We're preparing for the first eclipse, which is going to happen next week. And so I want you to be thinking like, where is it that you would want change? But even more than that, not necessarily what you want, but where does it feel like change is happening in your life? Where are you being called? What's sparking your curiosity? So tip number 2, prepare for change. Tip number 3 is sort of like a saying, not really a tip. I was reminded of this. There was a Roman philosopher that said, "Luck is when luck is when preparation meets opportunity." And I really like that for this week, and then also moving into the eclipse season too, because I think that, and actually, I like this for all of astrology in general, because I think that there's this misconception, even among astrologers, and myself included, I'm guilty of this as well, is that we see a transit or we see something in a natal chart or something, any other kind of timing technique in astrology, and we're like, oh, something is going to happen. What's going to happen? When is this going to change? Or when is this going to stop? Or when am I going to meet someone? Or when am I going to get the job, etc.? And it doesn't, like, sometimes, yes, it just, things happen and you can correlate that to something in astrology, like a transit or a progression or perfection or whatever. But a lot of times nothing happens or something totally different happens. And I think that's because we have to kind of work together with whatever it is that's coming in. And I think that's why I like this so much, is because it's like this luck, this like, oh, something happened, is when you're paying attention, when we're paying attention, uh, and we're kind of like following the symbolism. And that's when we get lucky, and that's when things happen. Granted, sometimes things happen when we're not paying attention as well. Um, but I think that a big part of why I love astrology is because it helps me to hone in on what's already happening so that I can attune to myself, essentially, so that I can help you attune to yourself, etc. So luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And then finally, I'm going to pull a little tarot card for us. I still can't remember that. Who was the woman that did the work? I can't remember. Starts with a B, I think. It'll come to me. Maybe I'll post it on Instagram. So as I'm shuffling, you can hold a situation or a question in your awareness, or this can just be general for the week. Okay, starting to get cards popping out, so that means it's time. Ooh, this is a good card. So I pulled the Strength card. Beautiful, huh? So I'm curious, what do you see when you see the Strength card? What what pops into your awareness? The Strength card to me is, literally about that, about strength, about looking into the mouth of the lion, looking into what it is that you're um, maybe afraid of, or that kind of seems ferocious. And then my sense is once you go into that, it's not as scary as you thought it would be. This card is about resilience, inner strength, and I think also what's really cool with this is it's like I feel like she is the lion also. Um, like the lion is a part of her, and so she's looking into a part of her as well. So I just love that. All right, cool. Well, I'm curious to hear what you think or how that applies to your life. I am sending you lots of love and wishing you a wonderful week. And I'll talk to you soon.